Well, it's been a while, but here is episode number 8 of Nothing But Hockey. We've got a full line this time around. Paul Capinigri up top. Freddie Pletsch is joining us this time around, and great to see you guys. My name is Ben Holden, and boys, let's start with the holidays. How was that for everybody? Cappy, I'll let you lead the way with that.
As always, great seeing everybody, seeing family, eating too much. But I will say, and Ben, you might have saw this on my Instagram story. My cousin's wife makes a ridiculous dessert. She makes cheesecakes and cakes, and
I
it
did
was
see that.
unbelievable this year. So always look forward to that on the holidays. So great time.
Nice. Freddie, what'd you do?
Well, two grandchildren and
Nice.
a 1 year old who is getting very, very big, Isla. And Christmas Eve, we go to our son's Ted's, and the daughter-in-law is 8 months and 3 weeks pregnant. And
Oh,
she had everything laid out perfectly to a T. Just a phenomenal day and night.
Nice.
I
awesome.
Very
mean,
nice.
ultimately, that's what it's all about, family.
That's funny
Yep.
that same cousin's wife 14 years ago was a she was ready to pop with a baby, and she kept it in that one last day and then had him the next day. And so he always comes, now he's turning 14 yesterday. But his birthday is always the day after, but we always remember how big she was and ready to pop at any minute on Christmas Day at our house. So
All the hockey guys are saying, wait till January 1st, wait till January 1st.
Right.
A big advantage.
That's right. Got to keep
that's
that
the
age
hockey
stuff
parent
intact.
mindset right
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. Well, good stuff, boys. Yeah, I just spent time with my parents and my son came over. My son's 23 now, and Freddie, you got kids older than mine, and man, it goes in a hurry. And I always get a little sappy on Christmas, thinking about when Luke was little and all those things. But all in all, it was good. Let's dive in, fellas. With all that said, so I'm going, of course, being an absolute homer tonight. This is being taped on Friday, December the 27th. So Todd McLellan will be coaching his first game tonight. Fred, I want to start with you because you brought some interesting nuggets up, as you always do, man. You're an encyclopedia with this stuff about coaching changes in the National Hockey League in this calendar year alone. Tell us about that.
Yeah, that's what I read today. 15 NHL coaches replaced this calendar year, 15. So, I mean, that's almost half the league. And we know, cliche, you can't fire 24 players or 23 players. And I feel kind of bad for Derek Lalonde in the holiday season. But if you're Steve Yzerman, you understand why they're doing what they're doing. You bring in someone with experience like Todd McLellan, and I think Steve Yzerman had to be kind of one eye on this season and another eye on what's going to happen the next couple of seasons developmentally, because everybody thought Red Wings, they made that late run last year, and you know, it, it, it's kind of like momentum, right? Right,
Yeah.
Cappy?
Yeah.
Momentum hockey. You think, oh, you had a great finish, everything's looking good for next year, and hey, how you played in the first period has no no connection to how you play in the second period, and how you play at the end of the season has no connection to how you play at the start of the next season.
I mean, yeah. Well, sometimes we'll use it, right? If the team does kind of end a season like that and then rips it off the next year, you'll say, "Oh, it was momentum." But it's almost impossible to have that because you never have the same exact roster. From my standpoint, as a Blackhawks kind of guy, they're I'd say 3 or 4 years at least behind Detroit, but you just don't know. You don't know if these guys are going to hit for sure. I mean, you do your best and you scout them and you try to develop them, but there's no guarantees out there. And then you try to sprinkle in the right veteran players. I mean, I thought they did some of that. A lot of Michigan guys. Maybe not too many University of Michigan guys now, but
Shots
no,
fired.
no, no, no. But I mean, you just don't know for sure. I think goaltending is a huge thing. You got to hit on that. It's just, and we're going to probably bring this up, but the Steve Yzerman thing today was very telling. He is the most chill, subdued guy, and that was as much as I've ever seen him as animated in a press conference. Maybe you guys have seen it more and seen more, but people don't post anything for him because he's very, he's not putting a lot out there that newsworthy, right?
No, that's the way he was in his whole career. And so what you're referring to, if you have a better way, you're free to share it with me, is what he said to the question that was asked about what he's doing and why the change and all that. And I mean, to me, you look at the big picture, two things. First, I'll throw this to you guys. Does this work? Does McLellan work? He's had a history of getting teams that were rebuilding and retooling and trying to become playoff teams into those spots. He did that in Edmonton. He did that in Los Angeles. I mean, he had some great teams in San Jose. But does it work, guys? Do you think this is the answer for the Red Wings and their head coach?
I'm
That's
Good
not very
answer.
convincing.
I'm just not convinced it's a roster laden with enough talent to make the NHL playoffs. I mean, it used to be, when there was what 24, 26 teams. They've never increased the number of teams that make the playoffs. So half the teams don't make the playoffs, and sometimes come January, February, you're just playing the string out, and I don't know. It would. Todd McLellan would certainly have to earn everything that he's paid, I think, to get this team into the playoffs.
Cappy?
Yeah, I mean, I think the key is what happens, in about 2 or 3 weeks, because usually you get a nice bump from a new coach, new blood in there, new whatever you want to call it, culture, and you go on a decent streak, and then maybe get a little excited. It's what happens over the next month, and I'm sure there's players that think it's on them. Like, hey, that's kind of what happens, right? Like, oh, coach got fired because I'm not playing well enough, or whatever. And I think there's going to be players now that are looking in the mirror, like, hey, the next change is not the coach; it's going to be me, or And I think that's where you can get some change. It's just so hard to make the playoffs in the NHL now, and because everyone's getting points even when they lose. We were talking about it before the start. 3 points are available every game, and I think they got a shot. I mean, they're not that far away, but you got to rip off. You got to have a streak. But you guys see them a lot more. I don't see them play a ton. Honestly, I texted you the other day, and I hadn't watched Patrick Kane's numbers. I haven't seen him play much, but those aren't Patrick Kane numbers. You knew he's not going to be his elite guy, but less than a half a point a game from a guy that's his sole top of his game is to produce points. That's not going to get it done for a playoff team.
Yeah, it's only the second time since the Illiches, Freddie, I'm sure you know this, that they've owned the Red Wings, that they've made a change mid-season. And, there's going to be the people on the way out, whatever side they're on, that say, Yzerman has to get this right. Like, this has to be the hire. And I'll be honest, I'm in that group. Like, you're in year 6, year 7 of this thing. This has got to work, or else the old Yzer plan, I don't know that it's going to work. I want it to, just because of my loyalty to Steve Yzerman and the Red Wings. But at the end of the day, you got to win games and you got to be a playoff team. So I don't know. I mean, this to me, you can look at it and certainly say we had to do something. Freddie, you and I watch them, as Cappy said, a lot. And the thing that I've noticed, they just didn't have a fire. They didn't seem to have a lot of intensity. There didn't seem to be a lot of accountability on the ice lately. That's been my take on them the last couple of
Yeah,
weeks.
I think Todd McLellan's going to come in and have immediate respect because of
Yeah.
his track record, because of his mentality of
Hmm.
being a head coach already in the NHL, and that maybe handicapped Eric Lalonde a little bit.
Yeah.
He had excellent associate or assistant coach in Tampa, was a key
Yep.
member of that organization, but it's different. You have to match the X's and O's with the ability to motivate. I think Todd McLellan can do that. So I think he has the ability to maximize the potential on this Red Wings roster. But I go back to my other point. I don't know if maximizing that potential is still enough to get them into the playoffs.
Yeah. We will see. We will see. It's going to be interesting. They've got a stretch of games here to close out the end of the calendar year at home for the most part. And McLellan even said today, he said it's going to take 5 or 6 games for us us being him and Trent Yanni, who came with him, to kind of learn the players, learn the room, and for the players to do the same thing, for them to adapt. But I'm with you, Freddie. I mean, he comes in and there's some ultimate respect there, and what he's done. He's always been a coach. You listen to guys. I'm sure we all did over the last day or two, listening or last day. Talking about having played for him, and the one thing that they talk about is details and accountability. You better be right, or you're not going to play.
Yeah, I think that was important. I saw an interview, and it was an interview done a while ago by Trevor Thompson with Cam Talbot, the goalies, and he asked him, "Who's
Yeah.
your favorite coach ever to play for?" And this was before McLellan was hired in Detroit. He said, "Todd McLellan."
Wow.
So if they can get, fulfill the potential of even a veteran like that to bring his A game every night, get at the top of his game, we'll see.
You know who I wanted, Ben. You know who I
Oh,
thought I hired,
I
but
think we all did.
okay. I mean, you had heard it a couple weeks ago, right? There was
Quenville.
right that they were
Coach
talking,
Q?
so maybe it
Yeah.
just didn't. They didn't see eye to eye on everything, but that's who. I mean, obviously, I've seen that guy talk about respect. I think it would be pretty immediate there when you got Stanley Cups in your back pocket.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, there's some familiarity. I mean, Yzerman's last year, McClellan's first year as an assistant with Babcock, so he's got that familiarity somewhat. Obviously, a lot of different faces, a lot of different things in the organization now, and kind of a full circle for Todd McLellan. Maybe this works. Maybe he's here for the rest of his career. Time will tell. So, who's next? The Rangers, the Islanders, or Buffalo to get rid of their coach?
I'll say not Buffalo. I think Buffalo's at the bottom. I think if Buffalo's doing something now, you're looking at players, I think, because a little bit, maybe, swapping a high end guy for another high end guy that's changed things up because they just fired their coach. I mean, Lindy Ruff's had a lot of talk about guys that have had a lot of experience. I would say he's probably at the bottom. I think it would probably be New York.
Bobby Ouellette.
Rangers, yeah.
Yeah. Freddie?
I agree. I think, as much as Buffalo, they had the 13-game losing streak, Lindy Ruff's an institution there. And Peter Laviolette, he's got that track record coming in,
Recycle.
get a big boost for 2 months, 4 months.
Yeah.
3/4 of a season, maybe a full season, but there's an expiry date on all of them for a reason. And as we make the transition maybe from NHL to college, that's why a guy like David Carle at Denver is saying, he's had overtures. Let's face it, he's had numerous overtures.
Yeah.
He's going to pick his spot, and it's not a secret that you get into the pro game. It's there's pluses and minuses, and the biggest minus is sooner or later you're going to be relocating. Right?
This is unscripted, by the way, for those watching, because this guy read my mind. That's exactly where I was going. Was going to bring up David Carle. I mean, what other commodity as a coach, guys, is hotter than DC right now or the last couple of years? Is there one? I don't think there is.
No, because he's an unknown in terms of the NHL, right?
Yeah.
Shiny car. I don't think he's going anywhere for a while, to be honest. I think. I mean, because honestly, he could stay at Denver for the next 30 years. He's built, all that. He's got a young family, I believe.
He does.
He's making a good living. He's getting to do a lot of great things too on the side, and I mean, I think eventually he will, but I don't think it's in the next year or two, unless I guess you could make a money thing, but he just doesn't come off as the guy that it's all about that. I think he really likes where he is. And he's still a really young guy. I mean, it's crazy. He's in his mid to late 30s
now.
Yeah. So, obviously I think teams will be knocking on his door. I just don't think it's going to happen in the really near future.
And he's tight with Jim Montgomery, of course. Jim was there when he was the head coach, and David was an assistant under him. So he's got that to lean on too, that friendship, that relationship, and that knowledge of somebody that's been there and is currently doing it. So yeah, that's exactly where I was going to go, Freddie, was to DC. And let's shift to the World Junior. We'll get into the college game. All three of us, Big Ten guys. I've been fortunate to work
There
with
it is.
both these men the last 5 years. Yeah, there it is in Buffalo.
In a year, it
Eh,
won't be the last time in the United States.
Yeah. So is this the year? Does the U.S. go back to back? Freddie, are they good enough? Can they do this? Are they going to do something they've never done in USA hockey history and win two in a row, two goals?
Well, I think they're fully capable, and I think you have to say they're fully capable because it starts in goal. You
Yeah.
know, hey, there's some great goaltenders at that tournament. I saw a Robble kid last year at UMass. So I mean, it's stacked not with just great goalies, but great pro potential goalies. That are 6'4", 6'5", 6'6". This is aside from the Stanley Cup playoffs or the Olympics, this is the best tournament. I guess the most exciting tournament you get because these are teams that are thrown together. There's all kinds of mistakes. You have young men who aren't, maybe mature enough to handle the momentum swings. Sometimes it's just exciting hockey. I mean, I go back to that New Year's Eve game in Ottawa, 2008. Canada and the U.S. went back and forth in front of 20,000 people. To me, that's what it's all about. So, can the U.S. win? Yeah, absolutely. And it's you know, you go to the Canadian media, it's all about Canada, obviously, and how Canada's got its best team in years, and they're motivated because of the fifth place finish last year. But you know, United States, our country, they're in as good a spot as anyone to claim the gold. And as you said, Ben, back to back for the first time, that would be something for USA Hockey.
Sure would. Cappy, what are your thoughts? I know how much you love Hagens. You got to do one of his games early this year
Yeah.
with Perot and Leonard. They got all those guys together, and it was point night for those guys in game one against Germany in the 10-4 win. What were your biggest takeaways from that one?
I doubling down on it. I would go as far as I think it's the best opportunity the U.S. has had to do this back to back. The best team they're bringing back. I mean, because
Hmm.
think of Perot and Leonard, and I don't think Bouillon was ever really that close. But if Leonard had decided to go pro, these are guys that aren't on your team. And I don't know Canada's lineup that well. I know they have McKenna and those guys, but I don't think there's a line that can match up with that Hagens line. You're talking about two high end first round draft picks already, and then maybe the number one pick in next year's draft. And the first period last against Germany was Germany, but every shift they were either scoring or had multiple chances to score. They just dominated the game. And I think a good omen for them is Trey Augustine got his stinker out of the way. I mean, I don't think I remember him giving up two goals where one went through him pretty on the power play, and then the other one where he whiffed on it with his glove on a flutter from the blue line. So if he's going to have a quote unquote rough game, you wanted it when you're scoring 10. So I think they're right there, and love their team. Cole Hudson's really good. He's a little different from Lane, but I love his
Five
game.
assists.
Love it. That pass he made, right when he got to the front of the net, then drops it. It's just like, it's unbelievable what some of these guys can do nowadays.
Freddie, what was the first year that you did the World Juniors when you worked the World Junior? Were you on the 04 one?
No, that was '09 in Ottawa. I
Okay.
did Ottawa, Saskatoon, Buffalo. I
Yeah.
did the one
So,
where John Carlson scored in
yeah.
overtime.
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah. So I bring that up because I've been seeing a lot of stuff. I'm sure if you're on social, those watching or you guys as well. 20 years since Ovechkin and Crosby in the World Junior up in Grand Forks. Do you guys miss Russia being in the World Junior? Put the politics aside. I didn't bring it up for that. But do you
Yep.
miss Russia being in this thing?
Yeah, you have to. I mean, I go back to the punch up in Piastani in 1987 when they had to turn the lights out in the rink. Yeah, Russia should be there. I mean, that was one of the classic stories from the World Juniors in Buffalo in 2011 when the Russians won in a, I guess it was a bit of an upset. They had the huge comeback, and then they got into the revelry, shall we say? They had a flight back to Moscow the next day, and they were having so much fun they needed wheelchairs to get to their gate. That was the behind the scenes story. But I mean, you called games in the KHL, and what I don't think international hockey would have the profile, would have the prestige in North America without the international history of Russian hockey. When you think the top international games, whether it be Canada Cup or going back to the Summit Series, any great international hockey has a Russian element because I guess you need a bad guy sometimes, right? And that's certainly
you need a villain.
The role the Russian played, but just the whole history with how they adapted the training and were more skilled, and North America had to incorporate elements of the Russian game, and the Russians incorporated elements of the North American game. I just think, again, politics aside, I completely understand why what is happening, but politics aside, it's always better to have a Russian entry in any type of hockey tournament, I think.
Yeah, and Cappy, we're going to miss them. They won't have a team. Again, I'm sure you've seen the list guys have compiled that, what the Russian team would look like in the Four Nations. I mean, this thing should be a Five Nations, man. I mean, think of that team. That is an unbelievable group of NHL guys that they would throw out there, and they would challenge for first place in that thing.
Yeah, and it's probably a last time. Maybe you see, I mean, unless something changes in the next 2 years in the rule, you're not going to see Alex Ovechkin play internationally ever again, which is sad. He's about to back. He's back. Is he back tonight? Maybe. I mean, I know he's close.
Saturday, I think he's coming back.
So, yeah, I mean, they're first back, but yeah, I mean, it's sad. And then seeing a guy like Ivan Demidov, who I wanted the Chicago to draft to be on. I love Levshinov. I just thought they needed forward over D in my mind. But seeing those guys at World Juniors, what do they do at the Olympics now? They go like without a country, right? Kind of. There's no flag by their name. I just don't know if you can do something where it's
Athletes
literally not a political thing. It's just letting young men who have they just want to play hockey and at the highest level and at the best competition. And I totally get it. Like Fred said, it's tough. But you'd love to see the best of the best and everything.
Yeah, I'd love to see him back in, and I'm sure that'll happen. It's just going to have to be globally resolved, I guess, for lack of better words. So one thing I want to transition with into, Cappy, you'll be in Wrigley, which I know will be a thrill for you, even though you're a White Sox guy. We'll get into that in a little bit.
I'm no baseball fan right now, the way that's going.
But in Freddie, you'll be doing the Michigan game with our boy Al Randall against Ohio State at Wrigley. How about this one? I saw this, Cappy. Well, we're all friends. We all talk. We all know the different things that we like and find and like to talk about. Off the wall thing here. Mark Lazarus. I don't know if you guys saw this from The Athletic. He put together a list of 10 potential outdoor game sites, and one of those was Alcatraz. How cool would that be? Now, Wrigley Field. Cappy, what's this mean to you, being a Chicago guy, getting a chance to go there and watch your alma mater against the hated Wolverines and get to work and be down on the field in that stadium, man?
I mean, it's cool because it's going to be my first kind of on-site at an outdoor game. I haven't called one, obviously. And then if I've been a part of any of it, we've just been back at the studio. So it's going to be cool that, the Big Ten is having us there aside from the call of the game. So I'm looking forward to that. It's going to be interesting how cold it's going to be. I'm seeing maybe like 25, 27 for a high those 2 days. So, but that's part of it, I think,
Yeah, the experience.
And being at Wrigley, I've never been at Wrigley this time of year. I've only been there when it generally looks nice and the leaves are green on the ivy. So
Yeah.
not a Cubs fan, but a Wrigley Field fan. That place is unbelievable, and it's going to be fun. And I'm glad they're doing it. Especially with the Ohio State Michigan game, that they're going to play an outdoor game, because they are, they've been talking forever to get a game in Columbus outdoor, and they're finally getting it in the NHL, but it's in end of February, and they can't have a college game because it would have to happen in March, and obviously the regular season is over. So I'm glad that they found a way to still get an Ohio State Michigan game outside, and they get to start it off. And the Buckeyes are surprising. I think Michigan's a little surprising, to be honest, on how they're winning. Up until, the little skid at the end. I think Coach Norato's done a really good job with I want to say not as talented, but not as skilled team at scoring goals, and they're winning other ways. It's pretty fun to watch.
Yeah. We'll get into that a little more. Freddie, how many outdoor games have you done now? What will this be for you?
Boy, I'm not sure it would be 7 or 8, but I always tell people I've been to the Big House.
Yep.
I've been to Spartan Stadium.
Yep.
Into this Progressive Field, that's baseball.
Cleveland.
Yes.
Two in
Soldier.
Cleveland. Soldier.
Yeah.
There's one. Anyway, all those places only for hockey. All those football stadiums and
baseball. Yeah.
For hockey. But I got to mention,
that's cool.
Wrigley Field, my high school history teacher. This is the connection. My high school history teacher, Gene Jadura, was the Philadelphia Phillies scout who signed Fergie Jenkins.
No way.
Fergie Jenkins, obviously the
pitcher,
the legend.
Yeah. So I used to walk by Fergie Jenkins' house every day on the way to high school. And when I was a kid, I mean, that was he was the local sports celebrity. Come back. He was a hell of a hockey player too, Fergie Jenkins.
Really?
But anyway, that's why I'm so fired up about Wrigley. Get to be where Fergie towed the rubber.
That's cool, man. That's good stuff. Well, let's get into, as we're going to get to the Big Ten and college hockey, more so the Big Ten, because that's where all three of us reside, and that's where we call home now for what we do on television there. One of my many part-time jobs, as you guys know. Let's start with Minnesota. I mean, it's been talked about that this is Moscow's best team. I know the last series they had, they were down some guys. Michigan State went in there, played really well. What do you guys take and what do you make of Minnesota? Freddie, let's go with you first.
Well, I think I said this before. Minnesota, Michigan State, the top two teams in the Big Ten. Minnesota with 14 NHL draft picks. They have the most skill. Not to say not a lot of skill elsewhere in the Big Ten, including Michigan State. But Minnesota, the most skilled team. Michigan State, they've got the best goalie. So if you see a showdown coming between Minnesota and Michigan State for the Big Ten playoff title, there's no guarantees that'll happen. Just look at Ohio State going to Wisconsin last year in the first round of the playoffs, or Michigan going to Minnesota in the semifinals, or the semifinal we did. Ohio State came real close to knocking off Michigan State.
Yeah.
But I would expect the Gophers and Spartans to be there at the end, and one game shot, best goalie versus best talent in the league should be great. And having said that, there's a number of other teams in the league. We can go from top to bottom. You want to play them in a one-game shot? Yeah, best of 3, best of 5, probably the most skilled, the best team wins. One-game shot, who knows? And that's the way the Big Ten shapes up every night, right?
Yeah, and Cappy, when you and I started doing this podcast, we started doing it back in September, I think. Mm-hmm. One of the things I said was the dark horse team of the year is, in my opinion, is Ohio State. And they're just quietly going about their business, aren't they? They just keep winning, and they're playing well, man. What have you seen out of your guys?
They got their defensive structure down pretty good. And I think, you look at Wisconsin, you just don't know with the transfer portal when you bring in these veteran players, how fast they're going to adapt, how comfortable they're going to be. You've seen guys at Wisconsin struggle. They're starting to turn it around, and now they're starting to come on. Ohio State's guys looks like they just seamlessly kind of fit right in there and have been their biggest part. Because when you look at, even I guess you look back at last year too, but their two best defensemen now are Hanson Bukata and Damian Carfani, who's a transfer from New Hampshire last year. And those guys both are around almost a point a game. They're second and third, on the team in scoring. And you just didn't see that coming for sure. And that's what happens with a team maybe where I think it's a surprise that they're where they're at. I didn't pick them to finish bottom like a lot of other people maybe did, but I had them maybe at like fourth or fifth. And they're getting great goaltending, right? Fred said it with Michigan State. A lot of, ills can be cured with great goaltending. And they're not giving up a ton of chances. Like I think the Penn State game, he had a shutout on, it was 14 or 15 shots shutout, or 19 shots maybe, but so you're not giving up a ton. It makes a little easier on the goalie, and they got Thompson's a great ad. He's about a point a game as another transfer, so they've hit the portal well, and they have some young guys. So that combination I think is elevated, and I think everybody around the country is trying to hit the portal the right way and have those guys just seamlessly come in, because it doesn't always work out like that. Just ask some of the other teams that have struggled earlier on.
And the guy with the best name in hockey and college hockey is playing there, Gunnar Wolf Fontaine. And he's been good for him, man. He's given him some good nights and put up some points. Freddie, nobody watches more Michigan hockey than you. You probably watch more than Narado. I'm kidding, of course, but somewhat serious. What's the deal with Michigan? We know they signed Will Horkoff. They're bringing him in. Young guy, Sean's son, former Spartan great, All-American, great NHL career. What's your take on Michigan as we get set to begin the second half of the year?
Well, with Will Horkoff coming in, adds size, obviously, 6'4". Looked pretty good in the NTDP exhibition game played earlier this year at Yost. And now, of course, the Red Wings have the sons of both their assistant general managers playing in Michigan, Keenan Draper and Sean Horkoff. But I think it's like, when you talk about this Michigan team this year and losing, Azar, McGroarty, Casey, Brindley, Duke scored 26 goals last year. 26 goals. A lot. You lose all those guys, you lose the firepower. Michigan's power play scored 8 at Penn State one weekend. I think they've got 5 or 6 the other 14 games. Wow. So, you look at the fire, I think it was like 6 weeks into the season. I looked at Brandon Arado during or maybe after the interview ended, and I said, you're going to do your best coaching job this season. Because they don't have the horses. One thing they do have is much, much better defensive structure. And it's, Steve Rollick talked about connectivity and playing connected. He was guys were kind of ahead of the term with that system or that thought process. But Michigan's playing that now. You give Matt Deschamps all kinds of credit for that. And their penalty kill's been really good, but they don't have the depth up front. They don't have the depth. You look at their third and fourth lines. You want more scoring from those bottom 6. Maybe Will Horkoff can hopefully help in that regard. Goaltending's been fine, although like Ohio State, like Minnesota, like Penn State. Well, I guess Penn State has settled, but haven't really settled on a number 1 goalie. So it'll be between Logan Stein and Cameron Corpy. Now, Cameron Corpy has had more wins recently, and you look at the numbers, you can say he's played better. But is that because Michigan has not had very good Friday nights the last month of the season? So had they just improve their game to help Cameron Corpy on Saturday night? Those are the types of questions that are going to be answered. But Michigan's strength right now is it sounds crazy to say, their defensive structure, the way they play defensively. And a lot of that's attributable to Jacob Truscott and Ethan Edwards, who were playing 24, 25 minutes a game. And I know the coaching staff has already said, what do we do next year without Truscott and Edwards because they're playing a ton. But it's a Michigan team that's for real, and you're going to beat them. You're going to earn it, or they're gonna maybe beat themselves with an off night. But yeah, Michigan. Uh, I think one of the reasons they're established where they are in the pairwise, I think they're eighth or ninth in the pairwise, is the success they had early. I mean, look at I guess tournament teams that they beat already. I mean, going to Boston University with a couple of wins. Yeah, so with that tough non-conference schedule, Michigan has certainly deserved the status that they have right now in terms of the pairwise. And
Yep.
they've only played 8 conference games, and it's going to be an interesting second half for them because they don't have a break.
Yeah, it's going to be a grind, and you and I'll have them 3 or 4 times. Looking forward to our games coming up. Cappy, what have you seen out of Michigan State? What's stood out from Nightingale's crew? Why are they so good? Why are they the number one team in the country, man, in your mind?
I mean, obviously it starts in net when you've got Trey Augustine there, but I just love their. I mean, you look at their weekend at Minnesota.
Yeah,
They hard fought battle Friday night for a tie. They're down what 3-1, 4 to
3-1.
one
yeah,
was it? And
yeah.
your thing, I looked at that and I was doing a game then or whatever, and I'm like, okay, this is over. And then I click on it 20 minutes later and they're up and they're ahead and and that just doesn't happen very often at Minnesota. So I just think they got a relentless mindset. Like Fred said, they're not the most skilled team, but they got 4 lines that'll come at you. Tommy Manisto at his speed, and he's still kind of hovering on that fourth line, and they just keep coming at you. They don't give up, and they just got a great attitude there, and it kind of reflects their coach. And I love some of their D have elevated. I think Sturback, who's playing over at World Juniors,
Yeah.
has elevated his game this year. But they don't have Levshina. They don't have that dynamic defenseman back there, but they've just got really solid players everywhere. I don't see a real weakness in that lineup, aside from maybe having, you don't need it, is a elite dynamic. You could say Isaac Howard, but he's the closest. But really, they just come at you in waves and are relentless with every part of their game.
Yeah, they really
Yeah.
are. And Tanner Kelly and Tiernan Shouty are those guys on that fourth line. And Fred and
Yep,
I talk about
veteran
them all.
players.
I love those guys, man. I mean, he's got speed. He'll bang you, he'll crash, he'll do everything. And Shouty's undersized and he plays like it. And they're just as important. Is it fair to say they're just as important as their first line? Because those guys generate so much and they leave an impact on the other team and they piss them off and get under their skin, man, and they do it really well. So one other thing I want to ask you guys about in the Big Ten, Freddie, you and I saw Wisconsin. I know Cappy, you watch your former coach's team a lot. I think Wisconsin's a team that they're in that category to me with Ohio State. Like I wouldn't want to play them in a one game situation. And Hastings' track record is such that he wins, and he made an impact last year. I think Wisconsin's a dangerous team in the second half. What do you guys think?
I would agree with that. And Cappy knows Hasty a lot better than we do, but
Yep.
coaches have teams that continually get better in the second half. And they had all those injuries early, especially on the back
Yep.
end. And once you've got injuries and you have to put guys into positions they're not maybe that comfortable, familiar with, it can have detrimental effects up and down the lineup. But they're healthy now. I really, and kind of, I would say Wisconsin and Michigan State are similar in this regard. If you could take the score bug off the broadcast and you tuned into a Badgers game or a Spartans game, unless you knew the score of the game and how much time was left, you wouldn't know because they play the same way. They
Yep.
play the same way in the second minute of the second period or the last minute of the final period. And I think that's a real tribute to those coaches the way they're able to build a team mentality. And, you know, Adam Nightingale said that last season. One of the biggest things he's learned as a head coach, and that goes back to the Shattuck days, is you have to create a team mentality. You have to build a team. If you're not everybody buying into that team first mentality, then you're not a team and you're not going to have success. And that really stuck with me.
Yeah. I mean, I just think the start of the year injuries, and then they weren't scoring goals. So, a new guy in net too, he's feeling pressure. Like I got to give up one for, to us to win, and then he's not playing his game that he wants to. And I've seen the last month where you're seeing the guy I think they thought they were going to get. He's relaxed and he's confident. He's not a big guy. So, I had their game against Michigan State at the Kohl Center, and he was attacking. He's not a big guy, but he plays his angles and he comes out and challenges. And he looked like a confident guy that looked comfortable with his game now, and kind of got over the fact of, the transfer portal and bigger and big expectations and everything. And I think you're seeing everyone around him coming together. And now it's a question. They've jumped up. They win those games. They've jumped up into the 20s in the pairwise.
Yeah.
They got this big tournament. If they can, win those two games, then you're popping right in and you're going on the road to Munn. So, I mean, if you rip off 3 in a row like that, you come to Wrigley Field and you might be in the teens and you're like almost back to where you were at the start of the year. So it's funny how fast that can change. But I do love that both of those teams, Michigan State and Wisconsin, are still playing holiday tournaments. That's nice to see. There's not many left. I got lucky enough to play in Florida. We had a holiday tournament. I went all 4 years, and that was so much fun to go and play different teams. And you see 3 other teams that you don't see ever. And you go to a random place like, Naples, Florida area. So glad to see those teams having their tournaments. And I know Wisconsin gets a good turnout at Pfizer Arena in Milwaukee. So that should be fun.
I heard that was just so your coach could golf then.
I think he wanted to go.
Some of the players.
I think John just wanted to go to the beach.
Was that the one that in Estero, right, where the Everblades played?
Yep. Yeah. Then I eventually played there. It was always the same 3 teams: Cornell, Maine, and Ohio State, and then every year a 4th team was different. Notre Dame became a year. Northern Michigan, UMass, and Clarkson, I think, were the 4 teams that I saw. So
I don't think they had problems getting a 4th team.
No. Craig Brush was easy sell job down there to go to that. But yeah, no, it's kind of cool that there's just not that many now. Scheduling's harder, and you don't have as many non-conference games in some of these leagues. So Wisconsin's got important games. I think they start tomorrow night, I believe. They play Ferris State. And I think UConn's there. So and they've been playing, I think, at 15 in the pairwise. So they could benefit themselves by doing well in this tournament. Get started in the second half.
Yeah, Kavanaugh's got a good club. Freddie and I will be loading up the Silverado. We're heading to Grand Rapids on we're going Monday, right? We're just going on the 30th.
Monday.
So selfishly, no offense to the other teams, the Tech and Northern, but I'm hoping it's Western and Michigan State in the final, man, because Fred and I've got the game at Munn before everyone goes down to Chicago for the games at Wrigley. So we're going to go over there and do a little road trip and scout. And I mean, I'll say this, man, I love the GLI. I mean, it was so great at Joe Louis, and I'm old school that way, and grew up on that tournament, as a young guy and broadcaster as well. Never did any of the games, but I'm glad they're still doing it, like you said, Cappy, with Wisconsin. And, we understand why, a lot of these programs don't do it. I remember talking to Moscow, Freddie, you and I had him like 3 years ago. I go, so why don't you play any games? I didn't even really consider it. And he goes, because I'm going to lose 5 guys, and, how about this fact too? Michigan, no World Junior guys since 2010. That is mind-boggling. It's not a slight. It's just reality. And it's kind of where the recruiting cycle, I think, ultimately is for Brandon Arado right now. So Michigan, they're going to come out guns a-blazing in that game at Wrigley Field, and can't wait to watch that one.
Should be fun. Go back to 2010, Michigan is not first time they haven't had a player at World
Yep.
Junior Tournament. I thought Michael Hage should have at least gotten an invite, but
Yeah.
that goes back and leads into a whole other topic, which we won't have time for, obviously. But Matthew
Huh.
Wood was
Matthew
on
Wood gets cut.
here, got cut. Now
Yeah.
you got cut for Gavin McKenna. Okay, but that
There's no other room.
there's always been a token one or two major junior players on USA Hockey's entry, and there's always been a token one or two major junior players on USA Hockey's entry.
Yep.
Is that going to change? I remember getting in an elevator in Ottawa. We stayed at the same hotel that Canada did, and I recognized Cody Goluboff, the defenseman from Wisconsin.
Yeah.
He was the only U.S. college player on the Canadian team that year that won. And I said, you're the token college player." He just laughed, and that's the case. So is that going to change when all the changes take place in the college hockey landscape? And we've seen what the last week Penn State and Notre Dame
Yeah.
have received commitments from 20-year-old players. 20-year-old players. So I'm just waiting for somebody to throw the fire onto the gasoline and saying they've got a stud 18-year-old from Saskatoon or Moose Jaw or Val-d'Or coming in, because that's going to create a ruckus in the hockey world for sure.
Yes, it will. One of my favorite words, a ruckus. I heard a ruckus. Yeah, you're right. We might have to do another podcast, the three of us
Just
on that
just on that
topic. Yeah, I mean and I'm up for that. So, last thing I'll throw out there, I've felt since the beginning of the year, I know I've said it to both of you, that I think this is finally the year the Big Ten finally gets another natty. Am I going to be right, or what do you guys think?
Just keep saying it every year, and you'll get right at some point, I hope.
Well, I've never said it in the last few years,
okay.
although, I mean, not publicly. I mean, I would have picked Minnesota. I would have picked Michigan in the last 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, David Carle, Scott Sandelin, guys like that have had really good programs. I mean, is BC talented enough? Do they get past one of these? I think it's the Big Ten's year. I really do. I don't know who it's going to be. Right now, I would obviously say Minnesota or Michigan State would be my pick. What do you guys think?
The 4 best teams I've seen this year that I've watched a lot of is Denver, BC,
Yeah.
Michigan State, and Minnesota.
Okay.
I have not seen Maine play this year.
I haven't either.
I've heard a lot of good things about them. Very deep team. You look at their stats, and no big scores, but just spread out scoring a lot like Michigan State.
Yeah.
I think it's as good a year as any. And obviously, it's an ironic thing that they're going back to St. Louis, where it was the last place that a Big Ten team, when it wasn't Big Ten, obviously CCHA.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's as good a year as any, because I also think there's a couple other teams that could get to the Frozen Four, but those 2 teams are as locked and loaded. Minnesota's D-core is just so good. 2 years ago we said that was their best D-core ever, and maybe it still is, just maybe at NHL level. But man, their D-core is unbelievable, especially the way Sam Renzel is kind of elevated this year. So loaded. I guess goaltending is where you maybe question them a little. I don't know, but those. It's as good a chance as any, and I think there's a really good shot for the Big Ten.
All you want is a ticket to the dance. I mean, ultimately, that's all you can hope for. I mean, Michigan's been there 3 straight years. Minnesota, 2 of the last 3, and don't have to remind you guys the last time a Big Ten team won, as Cappy said, 2007 in St. Louis with Jeff Lundberg and Justin
Abdelkader,
and Ethan Graham and all those guys. But that was a team, they were the 15th seed, maybe? Michigan State that year. Yeah. They just crept in. They had to win in overtime
in the third place game
in the CCHA tournament at the Joe. So just get in, and just one little play can change the course of history. I mean, that first year Michigan was in the Frozen Four in Boston. They go to overtime against Denver.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Luke Hughes on a 2-on-1 or a breakaway and could have ended it real easy. And the puck, it's overtime. The puck hits something, and just before he goes to shoot, it goes like that on edge, and he misses. And then 5 minutes later, the game's over. So you guys know you need a good team. You need all that. You need a little luck too.
Yeah.
That's right.
Hey, I'm not saying Denver was lucky to win anything. Denver's solid top to bottom, and
Yeah.
any team that wins the national championship is top to bottom. I'm just saying there's some elements that the hockey gods have to favor you a little bit, and who knows? Before I mean, you go back to that 2007, and that was the end of a great run for Big Ten teams, right?
Right.
Michigan
Minnesota,
Sure
won
was.
in 98. Minnesota went back to back, then Wisconsin in
06.
2006.
Yeah.
It'll come. It's just, I mean, and maybe it's good. It gives guys like us something to talk about. But you can look at the Big Ten over the last 10 years and say every year there was a Big Ten championship, national championship caliber team. And the one year there were what, three Big Ten teams in, and Scott Sandelin had other ideas.
Sandy can coach, man. We all know that. He's a good man. And yeah, well, I'm sticking by it, though. I'm saying one of those two teams wins it. I know Cappy's going to tell me to just say Michigan State because he knows I'm a Spartan at heart.
Could be Ohio State or Michigan or Wisconsin.
Could be.
Wisconsin, I think, is the team where you talk about maybe a 15 seed as they slowly creep up the pairwise. Because I don't think there's any. I mean, I guess they could rip off a 14-2 second half, and that could elevate them into the top five. But it's going to be tough in the Big Ten to play a little above 500. So, but they're a team I could definitely see veteran laden and some raw young talent too with Hensler and those guys. So, I mean. Michigan State. I mean, Minnesota last, Quinnipiac, and if Jimmy Snugger's got a net in front of the net, the puck rolls on him, he shoots it over the net. That doesn't happen. Minnesota probably wins that game 3-1.
Yeah.
So just lucky little bounces here and there, and I think the Big Ten's as healthy as it's been, and it's going to continue. I think where we talked 10 years ago when it started, it was kind of where some programs were having tough times. Minnesota was good, but Minnesota hated being in the Big Ten at that time. And now everything's kind of where everyone kind of envisioned it to be. And you got a lot of players that want to play in the Big Ten, and that's just good for the conference.
It really is. Let's do our 3 stars, boys. We all got 3 stars, right? I think Fred's got another prop.
I feel like Fred can have he can have all the stars. I don't
know. No props.
I didn't do a good job of putting something together, but
I think Cappy, I know I'm going to surprise. I know I'm going to surprise you with one of them.
Okay.
Maybe both of you.
Maybe I'll just judge the stars for you guys.
All right, Cappy, I'll let you start your 3rd star of the week.
We're going, you know what? I'm going to give it to the goalie, and it's not even that he did anything. Well, I guess he earned his money, but the Avs goalie just signed a 5-year, $5.25 a year.
Blackwood?
That he got that. Blackwood. I mean, good for him. I don't know him that well. They needed goal. That was the difference. That's why I haven't been winning. I think Darcy Kemper's making about the same and where he's at now. But I'm going to give him because he got the bag.
All right. There's going to be a lot of goalie talk in this one. Let's see what Freddie's got for 3.
This is 3rd star.
Yep.
I'm going to go with Steve Yzerman. It took it took some jam to do what he did the day after Christmas
on Boxing Day.
So there's the Shannon plan, there's the Yzer plan, and
the Shannon plan.
I think, as Cappy said earlier, could see some early dividends, and it's maintaining that momentum if they can get her going.
All right, I'm going to college hockey for my 3rd star. Going to the CCHA, not the old CCHA, the modern day CCHA. Love that league. Matthias Scholl of Bemidji State plays for Tom Serratori. He had one Division I offer, and it was at Bemidji. He's going to play his 100th career game for the Beavers on New Year's Eve against the aforementioned Scott Sandelin coached Minnesota Duluth Bulldogs.
Oh, digging
Nice.
deep.
Cappy, number 2
Got
for
a,
you.
got a good chance. Number 2, I'm going to go Cole Hudson. You mentioned it.
Okay.
5 apples yesterday, including that one ridiculous one where he's a foot from the net and he decides to do it behind the back, no look pass right on the tape. So just so good. So much talent. That family. His old man played, I mean, Fred might know, his old man played for UIC back in the 90s, I believe
With
it was.
Stazak or after Stazak?
Oh, I mean, before they closed the program down in 97. He was there really like right before I think the program went down in the early to mid 90s. But
that was probably after.
Look at his son. You know, he's got 3 sons. One's in the NHL, 2 are thriving in college, and I think there's one more coming. So, but Cole Hudson, my number 2.
Ready?
Well, I'm going. This is a little dated. I'm going to go with Joe Pavelski. Just because of what I mean, and this is from over the last 5 years since Big Ten hockey started. And Ben, this is your favorite question. Who are the guys you watch in the NHL? I cannot believe the number of times these young men have said Joe Pavelski. And where he came from, pride of Plover, Wisconsin, we all know. And what he did, you know, just before the national championship with Wisconsin, you know, I don't know, 1,200 NHL games, another 200 in playoffs. Joe Pavelski, just for the man he is and the way he's respected.
You're right. I love asking guys that. And I remember I think it was my second year with you guys at the network, and we had Caulfield on, and Caulfield told this story about how Pavelski's son wanted Caulfield's pattern and flex. And Joe called him in the car with his son. How great was that? That was pretty cool. My number 2 star, this is way off the board. You guys probably both know my love for music. So when I heard it for the first time yesterday, which would have been the 26th, recording on the 27th, the USA Goal Song of Freebird, an absolute classic. Let's go. That's my number 2.
Nice. I like that.
Cappy, number 1.
You know what? So this is, I mean, we haven't had a show for a while. So it's
been a couple months.
First star is going to a city / team / fans organization is the Calgary Flames. I don't know if you guys, I mean, I'm sure you guys watched it, but what they did for Johnny and his family that night, I welled up pretty good there. It was so well done. And then his teammates and Monahan and all that, it's like, it's just so well done. And it was like kind of like the last bow on all that. But it's to that city, and they're, you know, they weren't happy when he left. They wanted to keep him, but like all aside, they put that aside, family and everything. They did just an incredible job of honoring him and his family out there that night. So that's my first star for the last month and a half, I'd say.
All right, Freddie?
First star, at the risk of being the Michigan slappy, I'm going to go with Quinn Hughes. If you don't stay up late and get to see Vancouver a lot, I mean, Cale Makar's got 45 points to lead all NHL. But he's still like 14 points behind the team lead. There's some offensive jam in Colorado, but Quinn Hughes has 42 points, and that leads the Canucks by a dozen.
Wow!
And this is you know, some people get the C on their jersey, and they're a little bit different. They feel the pressure. Quinn Hughes has found a way, I think, to elevate his game. And I know there's a bit of a soap opera going on in Vancouver. Does Miller get along with Patterson?
He's earning that captaincy right now.
Yeah.
So I'll go Quinn Hughes. I mean, to me, he is the king of the undersized defenseman.
Yeah. I like that. That's a good one. My number 1 is a former Buckeye.
Dobish?
Yeah. I'm going with him, man. Gets the call up, first NHL call up. He'll start against the Stanley Cup champions on Saturday
Good
in
luck, kid.
Sunrise at 1 o'clock. That's my number one of the week.
He hasn't played before.
Great.
No,
It's his first call up. It's his first time.
call up.
Oh, he struggled pretty bad last year. At first, I haven't kept track on as his. Clearly, he's done better.
Yep.
But him, and now it'll be him and the other big foreigner from Michigan, both playing their first NHL games this year with Eric Portillo playing for the Kings earlier. About 2 or 3 weeks ago was that?
Yeah, it was about 3 weeks ago. Yeah.
It was always a good battle. Dolbish and Portillo, 13 feet of European goalie.
Yeah, big dudes. Yeah, it's good to see a few more, Buckeye guys making the NHL. So, yeah, got way behind Michigan, but who isn't at this point? So,
well, there's only a couple that aren't. Minnesota, and North Dakota. That's probably BC too, right, Fred?
They're coming. They're catching up. I would think BC.
And BU's right there too. They got a ton of guys too. But
Yep.
well, this was fun, boys. Good to see you guys, and thanks for the time and enjoyed it. Always good to talk with you guys. I'm glad we can do it in this format. We talk so much texting and calling one another. We might as well do a podcast. So, Freddie, thanks for coming on with us, and we'll have to do more of this down the road, man. Cappy, be good, man, and enjoy Wrigley, and both you guys enjoy Wrigley. Freddie, I'll see you this weekend, but Cappy, I won't see you until we do another pod. We'll do one after it.
You guys stay out of trouble in Munn in a week. It's that week from today, right?
We're harmless.
Be a good one.
Stuff. Looking forward to it. Yeah. Oh man,
Yeah.
you guys got great games.
See you in a few days, Gabby.
6:30 on January 2nd. Yours truly, Fred Pletsch, and our crew from Munn. So we'll look forward to that. Cappy, it will be on. You said you're on with Pizzo and Mike Hall the 2 days down at Wrigley?
Yep. 7 hours or so, and hopefully there's some foot warmers.
All right. Freddie will have the call, Michigan and Ohio State, with the legend, Al Randall. That'll be on the Michigan Sports Network. Those of you out there watching know where to find that. Your college hockey and hockey fans in general. Thanks so much for watching episode 8 of Nothing But Hockey. For Fred, for Cappy, Ben Holden saying we'll see you next time with more hockey talk.